Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard. Today I've got something fun and helpful for you. I managed to snag an Odroid Go Advance from Hardkernal. And by snag, I mean, gave them money and they sent me one. So this is an interesting beast, since you get it as a kit and have to assemble it yourself. I'm by no means a pro with this sort of stuff, but I've replaced some screens and fixed some systems and controllers in my time. I'll show you just how to put this thing together and get it up and running. Oh, and this is an independent guide. Follow it at your own risk. Don't blame me if you break anything. Here's the box exactly how it arrives. Yes, you can tell they spared no expense on the design. Just look at the subtle shades of cardboard that's so symbolic and evocative of cardboard. And hey, some sides even have a logo and an adorable little android guy with a tool belt, since this is a do-it-yourself kit. When we open the box, we have some big bubble wrap. Look at it! Grrr. Here's our first well-wrapped component. This is the LCD screen. You'll want to be super careful with this. These types of screens for any device can crack very easily, so it's important not to put any pressure on it. Next up, we've got the battery. And we have the mainboard. These are the buttons, and look, they even threw in a screwdriver. Isn't that nice? Here's the speaker and the analog stick. And finally, the charging cable. This one has a barrel connector. Alright, what we're going to do now is fit the screen into place. As it says right there on the package, be careful not to break the LCD. The ribbon cable is also a bit fragile in these types of screens, so you'll want to be really careful with that as well. Now, I peeled the film off the screen here, and don't do that. You want to put the screen in first, to avoid fingerprints and stuff, which is what I should have done. The screen is inserted under 6 clips that hold it in place. You'll want to angle it under one row of 3, and I'm using the top, which is what they use in the official assembly video. After you get it inserted under that row, then you'll want to bend the case just a bit to force it to flex a little, so you can insert the bottom half of the screen under the final row of 3 clips. So there you have it. Not the smoothest screen insertion, but it's in there, and I'll clean the fingerprints off it in a bit. Next, the analog stick. You can only insert this one way, since you have to screw it down onto a couple of posts on the case. You'll want to be very careful with the thin connector cable at the end of the analog stick, as these are prone to snapping if you handle them even slightly roughly. There are 2 types of screws included with the kit. There are longer ones and shorter ones. We're going to use 2 of the shorter screws for this component. Make sure not to over-tighten them, as that can cause the case to crack. But do make sure they're all the way down. I'll clean those nasty little fingerprints off camera. Next up, the screen cover for the front. Remove the tape from the center first. After that, you'll want to very carefully peel the tape around the outline. And I apologize, but somehow I managed to lose the footage of me actually doing that part. All you do is just peel off the tape, and then you go back to the front of the unit, and you gently work it into place and fasten it down. There's still some protective film on the screen cover, but I'm going to leave that there until later. Next up, we have the buttons and the D-pad. First, we'll insert the soft rubber function buttons. These are easy to install as they don't require any tools. You just plop them down into the holes and make sure they're all the way down. So just repeat that for all of them. Next, we'll take care of the main action buttons. So here's a close-up of the buttonholes and tabs. So you can see that these will only fit in one way. You can't put buttons in the wrong holes, as the tabs just won't line up. As I mentioned earlier, the D-pad has a little cutout in the corner. Like with the buttons, you can only insert it one way. Now to finish off the main buttons and D-pad, we have to install the conductive pads beneath them. We'll do the buttons first. You'll see that there are a few posts around the buttons in the case. Basically, you just want to align the holes in the pads with the posts, and then push them down firmly. Then we'll have the conductive pad for the D-pad. Very, very gently hold back the LCD connector, and then line up the pad on the posts and press down. The speaker goes in the circular area down on the bottom left. If you look, you'll see a little circular lip there. And then if you look a little bit closer, you'll notice that on the left side of that little circular lip, there's a cutout. That's for the wire, so you want to make sure you insert the speaker so that the wire goes through that cutout area. Otherwise, it won't fit properly and it can be loose and jiggle around. Okay, this part of the installation is done. It's time for the main board. First up, we've got 5 screw holes on the main board. Just note the locations of these as we'll come back to them in a little bit. The first thing we're going to do is just place the main board down. We have to do that very carefully since we need to get the LCD and analog stick connector cables through this large cutout on the side. Now we'll insert those 5 screws. I recommend not tightening them all the way at first, just leave a little slack to make sure everything fits right, and then tighten all of them at the end. With the main board secured, next we'll connect the speaker cable. It just slides onto this little port right here. You'll need to give it a little bit of pressure, but again, be careful. Now the fun part! It's time to connect the LCD. The little dark portion here on the port slides out and very slightly up. You'll need to gently do that, and then gently slide that cable into place. And make sure it's all the way in. Once that's done, you'll want to gently push the dark piece back into place to lock it in. Okay, now the analog stick. It goes right there into that tiny connector. So for this part, let me pause and say this may be the most dangerous and easily breakable piece involved in assembling this entire device. The dark portion here is a little flip tab that you'll need to gently flip up. This type of connector, which I've seen used on quite a few devices, can snap off very easily. So it's extremely important to be careful and gentle. You may actually want to use some tweezers here to handle this part, which is what they do in the official assembly video from Hardkernal. I live dangerously and just used my fingers because I've dealt with a lot of these before. If it's your first time dealing with this type of port, seriously, I can't stress how easily these can break. Anyway, slide the connector cable into the port underneath the little black piece, and then gently flip it back down. With that done, I'll go ahead and tighten the screws all the way, again being careful not to over-tighten them. Now for something simpler, the battery. It comes with a little strip of double-sided tape. You're just going to peel one side and place the tape on this side of the battery. Then we'll peel off the other side, and then we'll plug the connector into the battery port. The port is placed a little awkwardly, it's not super easy to get to, and like with the speaker cable, you'll need to use a little bit of force to push it in, but again, be careful not to push too hard and break anything. Okay, now for the L and R buttons. These have some posts that will sit in some holes on the case. Both the top and bottom sections of the case will have holes that align into these posts and hold the L and R buttons into place. Now, here's what I missed so you don't have to. The power button! Kind of important, isn't it? Now, the power button can be inserted in either direction, but it will only work properly in one direction. The tab needs to face toward the front of the device. If you face the tab toward the back of the device, and then put both halves of the device together, the power button will be stuck in the push-down position. So definitely want to avoid that. Next up, we have to snap the front and back of the case together. There are several connection points, and you'll hear a little click sound once they're firmly down into place. We have 2 of these tabs on the top of the unit, 2 on the bottom, and then 1 on each side. Now for this step, you'll want to make sure that the speaker wire is fully inside the case. Also be certain that the L and R buttons stayed in place and haven't shifted. Once you have the 2 halves snapped together, this would be a good time to test the buttons, D-pad, and analog stick. Now that the back is snapped down, the last big assembly phase is to screw the back and front of the case together. We'll use 4 of the longer screws this time, and a screw will go into each corner of the back of the case essentially. So again, I would suggest putting these in and just tightening gently at first, and then once they're all in, tighten them all the way after that, once again, being careful not to over-tighten. Okay folks, we're all together. Here's the fully assembled unit. We can power it on and it works, but now we'll need to install an OS and throw some games on there. Here's a quick glimpse at the system up and running! Woohoo! Big success! Now, to be fair, I had a minor problem after assembling my unit. My analog stick wasn't quite connected properly. It constantly registered as being held to the right. Guess I was just a smidge too careful when working with it. I took the device apart, removed the connector, and reinserted it. After that, everything was fine. I did also have to reconnect the LCD after that though, because I managed to nudge its cable just a teensy bit, but just enough to cause it to stop working. So it only took a couple of minutes to fix both of those things, and now it's fully up and running. I had planned on covering installing an OS and stuff, but really, I think I want to keep this video strictly about assembling and testing the device only. Downloading and flashing the OS is another topic altogether, so I'll cover that in another video. One quick note, you'll need to be able to read and write Linux partitions to put ROM and image files onto your SD card, so be aware of that. If you have any questions about how to put this together, feel free to leave a comment and let me know. I'll help if I can. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.